The final scene of the movie where Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone's eyes meet across his jazz bar.
And she talks about her death and how life will be after she's gone. And
you're finally given this moment of vulnerability that actually makes you think, maybe it's all going to be okay.
This is Causing a Scene, looking at the scenes in film that seem to perfectly capture a universal experience or feeling, and that have perhaps influenced the way we look at the world. Today, ghosts. This time last year, a dear friend of mine died suddenly. He was only 40. Soon after, I took the early morning train running from Oban in the West Highlands down to Glasgow. It was very cold, and I was alone in the carriage, and as the train passed by the shores of lochs and past forests, in the metallic half-dawn light, I kept thinking I could see a figure standing now and again amongst the trees. There it was again. Was it him? Certainly it made me think of my friend. Then, gone. Now, there again. Until a family got on the train at Dumbarton, breaking the spell. The whole thing was hallucinatory and incomprehensible, and something I'd only ever experienced before in films. That kind of presence, that figure, that ghost. The one seen at a distance, sometimes just momentarily. It's something that cinema is particularly good at. For example, the first sighting of the ghost in The Woman in Black, as described for us by its director, James Watkins.
Arthur Kipps, played by Daniel Radcliffe, has entered the house for the first time, and we sense it's a haunted house, and there's been noises, and he goes and investigates upstairs, and we sense there may be a presence in this house. He goes into one of the bedrooms, and he gets startled by a crow.
Come on, then.
And opens the window and looks outside the window, and outside there, at a distance in a graveyard, stands the woman in black.
And the interesting thing is that she doesn't do anything, does she? She's
just stands at the same time and then disappears. And I guess it's this subjectivity, the point of view shot, in terms of you're not quite sure in terms of her potentially being a ghostly apparition. So in that regard, you do wonder whether it's something he wonders as well, whether it's something he has potentially imagined.
What is it about the figure at a distance?
So you can't quite get a read on them as well. And I think there's something primal about that when someone's, and particularly when somebody's looking at you. I think it wouldn't have the same impact if the figure was looking away. But you can't quite read what this figure is about, and the sort of unknowable quality, I think, makes it unnerving and uncanny. The silence around that figure also contributes to the eeriness.
I think it's frightening because it's daylight and the figure isn't being threatening or aggressive or confrontational in any way. It's just a presence, and I think that's what's so scary about it.
This is Mark Jenkin, director of the award-winning film Bait, and a really haunting new movie, Ennie's Main. He's talking about a fantastic 1972 BBC film, A Warning to the Curious, adapted by Lawrence Gordon Clark from the M.R. James ghost story, about an ancient, fabled crown buried in the dunes along the Norfolk coast, and guarded by a figure who appears now and again amongst trees or by the water, distantly watching a treasure seeker who wants to dig up the crown. This, by the way, is a film I'd rewatch for the first time in years in the days before my train journey.
What can he do? He can't get away from that figure. It's a very brazen confrontation, but a passive confrontation. It's the stillness. It's just a life that's haunting this landscape.
That figure's gone again.
Yes, well, the light plays tricks. Perhaps he was never there. You were saying, Mr. Paxton?
Because when you see that figure reappears, and very brilliantly amongst trees, that's something that I'll always remember as a child seeing it, that was the figure amongst trees. Why there's a forest on the sand.
It is really incongruous, this kind of copse right on the beach. And Lawrence Gordon Clark's talked about that location as key, because you can't really tell where the land stops and the sea starts and where the sky is. So it's a very familiar landscape, but it's quite difficult to define. And the fact that the trees moving in the wind, which suggests that the landscape is in on this. The ghost can do so much, but the landscape can do a lot as well. It can kind of trap that character in order to protect what needs to be protected.
There are many indelible examples of this sort of figure on screen. In The Exorcist, Father Karras's dead mother appears to him in a dream at the top of the steps of a New York subway station. She stands, then turns away. The closing moments of Truly Madly Deeply, where Alan Rickman and the other ghosts watch from a window as Juliet Stevenson walks away up the garden path to the embrace of a new, living boyfriend.
We lay, my love and I, beneath a weeping willow.
It feels like these films are all paying homage to this classic scene from The Innocents in 1961. About a governess who has a spectral vision in the gardens of a country house. It's a scene that was a direct inspiration for James Watkins when making The Woman in Black.
There's a classic moment when the governess, Miss Giddens, is down with Flora, one of her children that she's looking after, down by the lake in Bly House where they're staying. And Flora starts singing a tune that, in a sense, summons the dead previous governess.
Flora, where did you learn that song?
I don't think I remember.
It's the song from the music box, isn't it?
And you see, through the point of view of the governess, this figure across the lake, Miss Jessel, in the reeds, slightly off-centre, so it's slightly edgy and eerie. It's a big cinemascope screen, but you're not in the centre of the frame where you would normally be, so that sort of unconsciously makes you a little uneasy. And she's sort of standing, almost like walking on water in a biblical sense, in the reeds, and staring back at her.
Flora! Who is it? Over there.
And it's one of the most haunting and scary shots in British cinema.
Maybe it was the West Highland light that morning on the train, producing a phantasmagorical effect. Maybe it was the cold, or just being tired and sad. But Mark Jenkins says he had a similar encounter.
I had an experience the first time I went on holiday with my dad to Brittany, and I must have been 5 or 6, I think, 7, something like that. And we were staying on a campsite, and me and my stepsister were running through a maize field. My stepsister was ahead of me, out of sight, and I was trying to catch up with her, and I ran into this clearing in the middle of this maize field, and there was just a woman sat in a rocking chair just in the middle of this maize field, and I stopped and stared at her, and she looked at me, and then I carried on running and didn't think anything of it. Just thought that was weird that there was a woman in a rocking chair in the middle of a maize field. And it wasn't till quite a long time later that I started thinking that probably couldn't have happened. That would have been really odd for that to have happened. So I don't know where that came from, whether it's a false memory or whether it was a trick of the light, or, I don't know.
He even made a short film about it, questioning every aspect of what happened, and with this telling line.
And there she was. But she couldn't have been there. She must have been a vision.
The thought that she was there is too odd. But then the thought that she was there but wasn't real is horrifying. So maybe I put that into my memory at a later date.
Or is this false memory, placed into my thoughts only seconds ago?
There's no past and no future, there's only the present. And we just reinvent the past as we go along. So maybe at some age I was telling a story or I needed a scary story to tell somebody, and I told it, but now it's gone into my memory as something that did happen. Because it's just too odd and too disturbing to kind of make sense of, which is why I made a film about it, because I wanted to set it down as a real object and say, this is what I remember at this particular point, so that I can't tie myself in knots thinking, am I just imagining it?
But it didn't make it any less real.
No. It just highlights how closely aligned the way our consciousness, our subconscious, our unconscious is so in tune with film language. You know, we created film in order to portray the way our minds work, and non-linearity, being able to jump around in space and time, which is great. But I think the downside of that might be that it haunts us as well, and we create movies in our head with this language that might not be real, that might traumatise us.
One of the words the French have always used to refer to screenings of films is séance. Cinema was born at the height of the spiritualist movement. Faith was fading away, and lo and behold, there came the moving image. Movies are filled with ghosts. In some ways, more than anything, cinema is a vast mausoleum. All the dead actors that we visit all the time. And paradoxically, it cheers us up. I've always thought it a little weird that cinema doesn't perpetually freak us out.
That sort of notion of cinemas as secular cathedrals, in a sense, where we go and work through our fears and anxieties and come out in some way cleansed. You sit down in a dark room in a congregation of people, and to see actors, and you're not only seeing them reanimated, you're seeing them much larger than life in the biggest moments, in the most dramatic moments, with that intimate access that you get to them. And they're super alive when you see them on screen, not just alive. And I think there's something about that that is in some way bewitching and entrancing.
All films, beyond a certain point, are ghost films. We go and watch the dead up on screen. It's another reason why we had to invent film and photography, wasn't it? It was to keep the memory alive. It's that saying that people die twice, isn't it? It's what people die when they physically die, and then they die again when people forget them. And we have this thing that stops us from forgetting.
When the Russian writer Maxim Gorky saw a film for the first time in 1896, a film of Lumiere's, the next day he wrote, "If only you knew how strange it is to be there, the earth, the trees, the people, grey rays of sun. Last night I was in the kingdom of shadows." It wasn't so much life, but its shadow, film, that put that vision of my friend, that apparition, in my mind's eye on the train, looking out towards those distant trees, about the same distance as I imagine the river Styx, the unbridgeable, untraversable distance between the living and the dead. The distance is everything.